Hey everybody, welcome to the Herd Fit Podcast with Dr. Sam Rhee and myself, Coach David Syvertsen. This podcast is aimed at helping anyone and everyone looking to enhance their healthy lifestyle through fitness, nutrition, and most importantly, mindset. All right, welcome back to the Herd Fit Podcast. I am Coach David Syvertsen. I'm here with my co-host, Dr. and Coach Sam Rhee. And we have an interesting topic, very applicable to the members here at Bison, reputation that we have worldwide. All right, we're going to talk about masters competing, the landscape of masters competing in the sport of CrossFit. Two masters athletes here that, probably a little bit biased towards the topic itself because it applies to us. And we just got done doing a bunch of qualifiers for the Legends competition, Legends Championship, sponsored by First Form, which is going to be in Arizona in December. And we have four, maybe five athletes that qualified from Bison. And, it's going to be something that we do together, fun, training for and going out there and competing. And I just feel like it's relevant because I listened to one of the guy that runs it, Joe Linton, talk on the Masters Chatter podcast about Legends a little bit, about the landscape. And I really, as I was listening to it, I had a lot of thoughts on my mind that I really wanted to share about masters competing. And towards the back half of this episode, we're going to really dive into some hard truths for masters to listen to and what we actually think is going to happen with masters competing across it. I think it's always going to be around, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. I don't think it's going anywhere. At the same time, I do not think it's going to get as big as many people want to or maybe even thought was going to happen. And Sam, opening thoughts on the topic, because we've both, we've never made the games or anything like that. We've competed locally. We've competed quarterfinals. Opening thoughts on this topic, the landscape of masters competing in sport.
I think master sport is, it's important to me. I've only competed as a masters in CrossFit. I've never been, I didn't start young enough to be an individual like you did. And I've competed to the best of my ability. I think you've gotten to the semis in your age group. My biggest accomplishment was before they had the top 10%. They were taking the top 200.
Yep.
And I
top 200 in the world.
Yeah, and I squeaked in barely on that one. And to me, that kind of competition and the ability to compete at the highest level at something is very meaningful. It means a lot. It meant a lot to me. It still does. And I think it means a lot to many CrossFit athletes. The fact that I saw you guys competing, I don't think I've been more impressed with a group of athletes, masters or otherwise, that I've seen in person than I saw you guys giving your heart out for those Legends qualifiers.
This year?
Yeah, that was really impressive. And so, to not have the sport aspect of CrossFit for athletes to compete in and to strive toward, that would be unthinkable for me.
Yeah. So let's just, for those that don't know or just want a quick little reminder, what is masters competing? Like what even is this? What are we talking about? And basically the number right now is age 35. When you turn 35, you are still in most cases doing the same exact workouts as any level of competition within CrossFit. All right, take away the games, just like the open, quarterfinal, semifinal. It's kind of the same level of workouts, but you're only competing against people age 35 to 39. And then it goes 40 to 44, 45 to 49, et cetera, all the way up to, I think the last masters group right now is 65 plus.
I think so.
So every 5 years, you move up into a new age bracket. More importantly, you're only competing against people that are in that age bracket. There are even some 40-year-olds that are fitter than most 35-year-olds, but you're still, as a 35-year-old, not even competing against them. So the pool of athletes that you're competing against, guys and girls, is a lot smaller. You can go do research on your own on CrossFit Games website, how many people are actually in the open division, which is everyone up to the age of 35. And then you have everyone in your, just not masters all together, just your 35 to 39. So the group of people, it's a lot smaller. And when you have less people competing, it's a little bit easier to experience some success. And that's where the numbers are. for your masters competing, and every 5 years you go up a bracket. We see it every year here, right? Like, yes, I'm 55, where most of your friends are, in a midlife crisis because they're getting older every year. You can't wait to get to that next age group bracket because you're not competing against people younger, but also just the crop of people. It's not as dense as it was those previous 5 years. So that's what masters competing are. I've heard rumors they might change it to 30-year-olds being the first one. But
Really?
I don't think that's going to happen.
Oh my God.
I've seen some competitions do that where the 30-year-olds were the first masters group. I think that's just garbage. I don't think that's going to be anything that sticks around for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Sam, why do older people, and we're both older people,
Mm-hmm.
right? Why do older people still want to compete? Let's get into that because I think that's one of the first things we need to kind of dive into before we get into what CrossFit should do and
Mm-hmm.
what masters athletes should do. Why do people our age, past our prime, maybe, compete?
If you look at the people here that are athletes, we have a couple different groups of people deciding why they want to do CrossFit. Some just want to come in, get a good sweat, work out every day. That's awesome. We have a lot of people who were used to competing at a high level. I cannot tell you how many former athletes we've had. Who we have here who used to compete in football, in field hockey, in soccer, and they miss that level of competitiveness, of pushing yourself, of achieving more. And you can find that in other sports. You can be a triathlete, like an Ironman. You can go run. I know some master swimmers out there as well. But CrossFit it scratches an itch for a lot of us that are athletes that are older, just wondering how good could I be? Like, how much can I achieve? What can I do? Or if you're a competitive person, where do I rank with others, my age group, against, am I really fit, or am I just, fit at my gym? Am I fit in my local area? Am I fit nationally? Am I fit compared to other people in the world? And for a lot of us who are used to competing at a very high level, there's so much more that you can get out of a sport when you really, really focus on achieving your potential.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just life situation, based on your life situation. Think about the amount of women here that have had kids, in their 20s and their 30s, and then at some point they're done, or they're done between babies, right? They have the year or two, and their life situation now kind of opens up the door to, hey, now I can put more time. I'm no longer pregnant. I'm not recovering from my pregnancy. I am going to put everything I have into training. So I think life circumstances really do open up the door to a reason why someone wants to compete. Another one is, the surroundings. Like, who are you around? You come to CrossFit Bison. Again, I don't think we, push competing. I think we have done a good job of blending the two together, like just fitness but also sport. But when you're around an environment, we are all of us are products of our environment to a point. Some more than others, but all of us are products of our environment to a point. And there's a lot of people here that like to compete. We have a crazy amount of people that make quarterfinals every year. That might make you want to be like, you know what? I want to do it too. We see that with kids. I watch it with Brock all the time. He's having a blast with two toys, and he sees two kids with another truck, and he's like, I want that one, not the one that I have. It's same thing. You come to the gym, and you're very in your own zone. You're having fun. You're working hard. And then you see these people sign up for their Asbury Park Summer Games, like, wow, that looks like a blast. I'm going to do it now too, or I'm going to do it next year. So I think surroundings dictate a lot. But I don't know if this is a pessimistic side, but it's reality to some, not all, that I think some people compete because when they become masters, because it's easier. It's easier to compete as a masters athlete than an open athlete, just based on the math alone. Like, you get to a point in your 30s, you're like, dude, I'm trying as hard as I can. I cannot hang with these guys. I just can't. I'm doing everything I can. They're just much better than me. Faster, stronger, recovery, everything. But you get to that 35-year-old group, right? You cut that number down and probably by 80% of the amount of people. And a lot of those people, they're not the fire breathers, right? I've been to local competitions. I've been to sanctionals in France and competing in open divisions. And everyone's like, oh, like a mutant out there. And everyone's very serious, not really talking to each other. Masters competition, like we're joking around, we're talking about our kids. There's a different vibe at these Masters competitions. They're still intense, don't get me wrong, but there's a different vibe. And I think that once you remove yourself from that open division, you get old enough to be a Masters athlete, it's a little bit more realistic for a lot of people to achieve a goal, right? Because the math is different and the vibe is different.
Yes, but it's still extremely competitive. Like
Very.
if you don't have the talent to compete at the highest level as an open division athlete, you probably are not going to have it as a match.
You're
It's
right.
not like you suddenly turn on the afterburners when you become 35.
The top is still the top.
Yeah.
You know, you look at some of the names that were in my group this year, Scott Panchik, you see Dan Bailey, Sam Dancer. Those guys could have a shot at making individual games.
Yes.
Maybe semifinals.
Yes.
Which is still unbelievably elite. But let's take the games out of it and just say, like, all right, it's going to be a little bit easier to make quarterfinals as a top 10% athlete than it would be in the open division.
Yes.
So I think, and it becomes realistic for some.
Yes.
And I think that's why some, when they become a Masters athlete, when they become old enough, they see the light at the end of the tunnel being not as far away.
Agreed.
Midlife crisis. Do you think that's a reason why?
Maybe for some.
I'm not anti midlife crisis, by the way. I think it gets a bad rap, but I don't want to go too down. My point of bringing up midlife crisis is, are people realizing things are starting to dwindle a little bit, right? Whether it's your body type, whether it's your energy levels, guys, with your testosterone numbers, right? You see things going down, getting worse. And because because of biology, it's going to come to a close at some point. And at some point, it doesn't get better, right? Does that age 35, 40, 45, 50, 55, when that number comes into play, is like, no, dude, I am not ready to let go. I want to keep pushing myself so that I can just keep enjoying these moments of feeling like a big, tough, strong, masculine man. And do you think that plays a part in why some people want to compete?
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say it's a crisis, but I would say at some point in your life, you've accomplished certain things. Maybe you've worked really hard at your job and you're at a certain level, or you've gotten your family together and you've achieved something with your family, in terms of your where you are economically or where you live, and then you're looking for another challenge. So instead of maybe midlife crisis, I would say you're like, what will be my next challenge? I've had these challenges in my 20s. I've had some challenges in my 30s, or now I'm in my 30s and 40s, and now, like, what will be the next challenge that really stimulates me?
Makes you feel alive.
Yeah, drives me. And there's no doubt that if you are pretty good at CrossFit, like, this is a fantastic challenge to see what level in that sport that you can achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, some people pick career that they really want to put everything, all their chips in the table, and kind of like forgo their health a little bit. But hey, they saw gains there. I do think that an individual person, if you look back on your entire life, like the one constant in my life since as early as I can remember T-ball. I think I was 4 or 5. That's like one of my earliest memories. Always wanted to win. And every spring, it was this sport. Summer was this sport. Fall was this sport. Winter was that sport. It was what drove me. One of my teachers when I was in high school, who didn't like me, went to my mom. She goes, all that kid ever cares about is sports. That's all he cares about.
That's a effing compliment.
I know. And, but it wasn't, she sucked. She was a terrible teacher and just terrible. But, that is like, because I'll reflect sometimes. I will, like, I admit this. I ask myself, why am I doing this? Sometimes I do. Especially this past year when my knee got hurt at Legends last year. I'm like, I started having those thoughts. I'm like, why am I doing this? I have a kid now. I have a business. I'm limping around the gym as I'm trying to teach people how to do CrossFit, and it's safe, right? It's always a tough thing to draw, to really do. I've been banged up over the years a little bit. Nothing ever that serious, but I've had little nicks. And as a coach, sometimes I'm like, am I being the right example here for that? Right? If someone, especially new to the gym, and I know that part of the reason / the biggest reason why I like to compete is just what I've been doing for my entire life. Without it, I don't feel like I'd feel alive. And if I get rid of CrossFit competing, I'm going to find something else to compete in. and I don't want to do golf because I'm terrible. And it's way too time consuming.
Very time consuming.
I don't, the competition of having a business and trying to make bison the best CrossFit in the world, that's there too. Maybe that cup will get more filled if at some point I want to step away from competing, but it's at the end of the day, I don't want to. And it's because you love it. And I really do think there's some people, a lot of masters out there, they don't want to let go of something they've been doing for 20, 30, 40 years. It's really hard to let go, and it's really defined them as a person in a lot of ways. So, the getting into the business side, right? That's the sports side, the competing, the mental side. The business side of masters competing is, I always kind of compare this to minor league baseball versus major league baseball. People go and watch, there's talent there, there's respect, right? Like, I've been to so many minor league baseball games. I respect everyone out there, really high level, being paid to play baseball, but it's not the same. I watch a lot of college football. I've had to watch some FCS games, like some like D1 AA schools, right? James Madison, Mercer, over the past couple weeks. You watch them, like, all right, like, good athletes, better than athlete than I've ever been, but you want to go watch Clemson versus Florida State or Michigan versus Rutgers. Mm-hmm. Like, that's what you really want to watch. And then the ratings and the numbers, that tells the story too. To be blunt, there are tenfold how many people want to watch individual CrossFit over Masters CrossFit. And that's never going to change. And because of that, and because now we're over a decade into this, I think at some point, the business side of CrossFit and sport and Masters, there's going to be a divorce, a fracture there.
You're 1,000% right. It's not even a discussion of if. It's happening. There's no money in Masters sport CrossFit. That's the bottom line. CrossFit has done the experiment. They've run it. And I don't want to hear any master say, well, they haven't publicized it properly, or they haven't done this right, or they haven't executed blah, blah, blah. And if you did this, they would come. If you built it, they will come. No, get it through your heads. There is no money on the master side of sport CrossFit. Mm-hmm. I more than anyone else support CrossFit sport masters. Mm-hmm. Okay. When I went to Madison 2 years ago and I watched the games, I went to as much of the masters as I could go to.
How many people were there?
It's nobody.
Yeah.
And like, listen,
yeah. And this is no offense to the masters.
No.
We're just putting out the facts.
Yeah. Are there people who knew these athletes that were there cheering them on? Absolutely. Were there but I'm even on the 35 to 39 side, no, I'm sorry. And these guys were competing at some of the highest levels I've seen, but it's not the individuals. Mm-hmm. And honestly, anytime the individuals were competing versus the masters, it was a real hard sell for me to be like, should I go watch these guys or should I go see what the individual guys are doing? And honestly, it's just not, you're right. It's not the same. I can't emphasize that, I understand CrossFit is a community. Mm-hmm. And they're like, if you want to, you're selling out on the community if you're not building up the masters. But listen, you can't lose. They're a business. Like you said, they're a business. They can't lose money like that. Mm-hmm. And they've tried very hard. I would say if you're a masters athlete, you should thank them for what they've done over the past 10 years.
The effort's been put in.
Oh my God.
For improvements. They listen to the community.
They've done everything.
But this past year, here's an example, right? They did Helen at the games this year, the Masters athletes, 2-0 Wednesday, I think. And I did want to tune in to just watch a benchmark be done, but I think I was home and I had the time. And the camera was, you couldn't see anything. It looked like it was 200 yards away. You couldn't barely even see people running. You could not watch the Masters compete. I was a little disappointed. A couple days later, Don Fall comes out and said, hey, we had to make a really tough decision based on the resources that we have. We're being streamed on ESPN, that we had to really put all of our resources into the open division. That was the first, appreciate the honesty. It wasn't, he doesn't care about the Masters. It wasn't. And because I'll tell you what, you Masters athletes, you would have watched it, but you know who wouldn't have? Everybody else.
Everybody.
Everyone.
And
here are some tangible numbers for you, right? the Legends competition, which is between them and Masters Fitness Collective. They're probably the two biggest worldwide Masters comps throughout the year. And they live streamed it on YouTube, I think 3 years in a row or 2 years in a row. And they went all in on the production. They got, much more money than you think. I think Joe threw out the number, Joe Lynn, between $100,000 and $200,000 to just get people at home to watch. And with big sponsors that will sponsor a competition knowing that it's going to be live streamed, the number is generally about $1 per view that we will sponsor your comp to help you do this live feed for $1 per view. And hey, how many views you guys get last year? 25,000. So 25,000 versus 100 to 200,000. Can you do some math there? Somebody's losing over $100,000 so that your friends and family at your gym can watch you do some thrusters and rope climbs. Would you do that? Would you provide that money for somebody else? You probably wouldn't. And they did it 2-3 years in a row. And they did everything right. They even have their own YouTube channel. Like, hey guys, this is where it's going to be. 300 subscribers maybe. So they had to get Talking Elite Fitness to have them come in, and they used that live stream because they had 25,000 followers. Why does Talking Elite Fitness have 25,000 followers? Because they talk about open CrossFit.
They talk about the elite. Yep.
They don't talk. They're not talking about us,
no,
right?
Right.
And again, I know it's a collaborative effort, team effort. I respect them for trying. I respect Don Fall for being honest about why they just put a camera up on the other side of the field while everyone's doing Helen. But this is where Masters athletes need to have a lot of self-awareness. All right. We are all impressed by you. So is everybody else. But that doesn't mean it's not going to put money in people's pockets. And there is a really bad misnomer, or a really bad reputation that a lot of Masters athletes have in sport of being entitled, a little pompous, and thinking that they deserve more attention because they're pretty fit. Where does your head go on that when you hear, because you've heard it too, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're pretty plugged in. You listen to a lot. I do too. You read a lot. Complaining almost goes hand in hand with some Masters athletes that have been doing it for 5 to 10 years.
I understand. Listen, these are Masters athletes that are performing at a very elite level. So I understand the fact that they are complaining they're not getting enough attention, and they're free to go ahead and do so. I don't have a problem if you want to get on your soapbox and say, we're not getting enough attention. People aren't treating us right. We need this, that, and the other thing. God bless you. Please go ahead and do that. But you know what? No one's listening.
Right.
And you have every right to go ahead and complain, but the reality is what the reality is. And it's already changing. Like if you look at the games for next year, they are from August 8th through 11. That's much shorter than it ever is.
Fort Worth.
In Fort Worth. And so guess what they're going to do? They're going to have the individual and the teams. Guess where adaptive teens and masters are going? Not to the games next year. And just wait. They're going to have to announce it soon, but they will. Back in 2021, Dave Castro said, even before he came back, this was a long time ago, he said, we need to move the teens, masters, and adaptive and make them separate. He said that on a podcast. Like, I pulled that out of somewhere. I can't remember, but you can go back and look. He had said that.
I do remember that. I do.
And people are saying, well, masters make up 50% of the open participants and so forth. Yes, but they're not being watched on the higher level.
Right.
Yes, but you know what? All these, like when you have 60,000 35 to 39-year-olds competing in the open last year, yeah, guess what they're watching when they tune in? They're watching the individuals.
Right.
Like they're not unless they personally know someone in that division, they're really going to watch it. Like the people, and they're going to say, well, look at Sam Dancer. Look at these people. They're amazing athletes. They need to be featured. Yes, Sam Dancer is a stud.
He's an anomaly.
He is a figure. He is going to make money as a professional CrossFitter, but not everyone there are so many 35 to 39-year-olds in there that I don't even know and don't care.
Right.
I care about Sam Dancer because he's a specimen.
Yeah, he's a brand.
And he is unto his own self.
Right.
So unless you are an athlete who can build your own brand, a Sam Briggs, I don't know, Sam Dancer, that's not going to elevate that division to where you think it ought to be.
Right.
And if you think this is wrong and we're not right, that's fine. I know CrossFit's going to give another entity like a Legends, like an MFC, the opportunity to see if they can make money with the CrossFit branding behind it.
Yeah, a little bit of support.
And what do you think? I mean, maybe if they got 25,000 views, like if you branded the Masters games, like what kind of viewership might you get? You might get maybe 2-3 times the amount, maybe more.
Yeah, especially if it's not at the same time as an individual. Like if you can separate it and put the Masters somewhere else where someone else running it in July, and just like not have it the same week as cross. Because I know when I watch the games, schedule's tough. Like I can't watch everything I want to watch, but when I do have time, I'm going to go watch the individuals or teams. If the Masters games are in June or July somewhere and it's not as big of a spectacle, but there still is some sort of broadcast, I would be much more inclined to watch it.
I'm kind of hoping they would do it post games. So maybe November, December.
Okay.
If
That'd be awesome. Yeah.
If there's someone fit enough to sort of compete on, if there are Masters on the individual level, like some of the younger Masters, but then they still have an opportunity to compete on the games level.
Dancer said he's going to go for individual next year.
Yeah. So wouldn't it be awesome to see him compete in August and then give him a couple months to sort of get his crap together again and then compete again in December?
Yeah.
How awesome would that be?
Yeah. No, it'd be huge. That'd be really cool. So, yeah, I mean, I think that Sam and I are both on the same page that the facts, the numbers, they don't line up with what a lot of Masters athletes think or I would say what Masters athletes want them to be, right? And in no way do we think that you should shun them. I mean, I think we could spend some time on talking about why I think it is important for the Masters to have an outlet. I mean, we talked about some personal experiences, why we do it or why some people in this gym do it. But why for the CrossFit brand is it important? It is important to give them some sort of avenue to compete. It just might be similar to the vibe they had in 2012 to 2016, where you're kind of like in a back room somewhere. That's where a lot of them start to complain the most, is that in Madison, they kind of had like a back shed with a little set of bleachers. That's where they did their workouts. And to me, that's good enough. But I understand why that people wanted to be in the Coliseum and get more attention. And, there's a culture now where I do think a lot of people do it for the attention. That's literally the only reason they train hard to compete, which it's sad to me. I'll get into that later on. But let's keep this on. Why should they do something for Masters competing? Why should CrossFit be involved in it? And my answer is the simplest thing in the world. Everyone's going to be a Masters athlete at some point. And there's a lot of people in this gym alone. That's why their fire burns bright. They cross it because they want to compete. They cross it because they want to achieve things that they couldn't achieve when they were younger. They want like another shot at it. That's going to be a constant feeder system. Every year, there's another group of Masters athletes coming in. And a lot of them will have that mindset. Hey, this is my next shot. I got my butt kicked for the last 3 years, or life got in the way, had a baby, different job. Here we go. I mean, I remember when I first became 35, I was so pumped. It was like probably the most excited I had been as an individual since like my early days. So I think that there's a reason why there should be something for CrossFit athletes as they get to the Masters level to still compete in sport, just not as big as what we thought some people wanted it to be.
Everyone complains on the Masters side, they're not publicizing us enough. And if you did, you would build more human interest. And that's why we should have Sport Masters CrossFit, because there are human interest stories there that I do like seeing and watching. I do like seeing and watching Jason Grubb compete, learning, where he started, like very humble, like had no,
right. Great success story.
Yeah, great success story. When you see there was another woman who, Susan, I forgot her last name, but she's won like 10 sports. I actually met her very briefly when I was there 2 years ago. These are, even, what's her name? Becca Voigt, Miller, the fact that she's competed for so long at such a high level, yes, these are stories that need to be elevated, that need to be, publicized, because you're right. We're all masters at some point. And to look at these athletes and say, wow, look at these people killing it at whatever age that they're at. Even David, the older guy who's like now 65 plus, the dentist with the long hair, Hip and Steel.
Yeah, Hip and Steel.
Yeah. So I met him too. Like, I watch these guys and they're so inspiring to me. We should have these people featured. The problem is that not enough people are really watching it. And if you're like, oh no, if we actually spent more money and time, they would. Okay, there's going to be another opportunity. They're going to farm it out to another organization. I think one that really could execute and fulfill whatever aspirations that some of these masters athletes have. They're going to do it. Like Legends has really given it the college try.
Yeah, they've put a lot of effort into it.
Imagine if they had the backing of CrossFit and through a separate event. You know
Joe's
what?
pretty open about the fact they haven't made money yet.
Yeah. So let's see what happens with something like that, with the CrossFit branding behind an event like this. See what kind of push they can get. See what kind of numbers they can make. Can they turn a profit? Can they make this something that's worthwhile from a financial standpoint? At that, I remember for the Legends, when they did the broadcast, when you were competing, and it was the Talking Elite Fitness guys who were broadcasting, they were like, listen, if you care about the Masters, watch, do this, do that. Like, go to their sponsors, really show, with your pocketbook that the Masters are important. And you know what? It hasn't happened.
Yeah.
There's going to be another opportunity. So if you truly believe that this is viable, that this is something that can be worthwhile financially, I know CrossFit's going to give that opportunity. It won't be at the games. It's not going to be next to Pat Vellner and
Roman,
and all those guys. But like, there's going to be an opportunity.
Yeah, there's going to be something, and this is where I want to just give the reality check to some of the Masters competitors that, I'm one of you guys. Like, I love to compete as well, and my challenge to you, and this is something that I would say to anyone that goes down the competition train, because of the world we live in, the social media. I remember saying this years ago on my Instagram, that if there was no such thing as social media, and there was no such thing as a podium picture, and no one knew that you competed, those three things, would you still compete? Because if your reasons for competing, especially as a Masters athlete, all right, are only external, right? We all have external desires, but if they are only external, I think you should walk away from the sport, because I think you're going to be very disappointed at some point where there are just not that many people that care. And it's, again, no offense whatsoever. It's just the truth, that if you think something new is going to happen in your life because you're going to get attention and become famous, or you're going to get a lot of people to respect you because of those components, I think you're going to in for a really harsh dopamine crash, right? That it's just not that important. I want to challenge a Masters competitor that has the highest aspirations to compete for yourself, to compete for the goal of pursuing something that's really hard, commendable, respectable, check all those boxes. But it's got to be something that you truly want for yourself. You just want to accomplish it. But this is a hard question for some people to admit out loud, but I've been around this for a long time, and I could usually spot it from a pretty far distance away, that if you're doing it for the external validation and you think it's going to change how people perceive you, I think you're very wrong. And I think that when I hear the people, whether it's on a podcast with Master Chatter or someone else on some sort of bitching Instagram post about not getting enough attention, my first thing I want to say, I almost never comment on anything social media, I just don't want to go down that path, is saying, like, someone put you on the wrong train. You were guided incorrectly. Getting into the sport is about you, especially as a Masters athlete that's not getting paid. You got maybe you're not sponsored if you get a couple pairs of shorts and a shirt every now and then, right? That if you are going down the competition train just for the external attention, I think you should get out, because it's gonna ruin you long term. Because at some point you're gonna learn, like, you did all that shit for other people, all the grinding and work, and no one really cares that much. And that's why the Masters competing. Now, guys, we all have friends, we all have family, we all have gyms. We support you, right? We have a lot of Masters. I support everyone that comes competes from here. Good, bad, new, old, veteran. Like, I'm proud of you for accomplishing. I'm your coach, though. We're talking about the public, and this is why Masters competing is just never really going to get to the level where some of the people think they are, and that just causes so much dismay in people's heads.
I don't think any of our athletes here are competing for glory.
No.
It's not so that they could get their name up in lights.
Yep.
Everyone that I've seen here, they just want to see what they can do.
Yep.
They believe that they can do more. And when they do that, that's what I love seeing. And that's the purest expression of what competition in sports should be.
Just got done training with Amy and Kat and Alex, who's definitely not a Masters athlete.
Oh, that guy's like 20-something years old.
That to me, like that's I think why we do it. Like, I can't speak for them, but it's the process, right? Process over results. Like, we love the 10-week buildup of like getting after it, being smart with recovery, but like feeding off each other. Shared pain is good pain. That's where that's what I love. That this is my favorite part of competing right there, is like the 10 to 12 weeks leading up to a comp, because it's pure. It's just hard work, but it's not for like, hey, I hope these people in Wyoming see what I did for my training regimen today, because they don't care. And I would say most people in this gym don't even care. And it's a huge letdown if you think that they do, and at some point you find out they don't. That's what I see with masters that complain about competing. They thought because they accomplished something, the world was going to change for them. And it's like, we clap, high five, proud of you, see you later. What's for dinner tonight? Like, that's where our head goes. And that's something that I think we all need to kind of keep checked in on.
No one I know can really make a living as a masters athlete.
Yeah.
They're just like everyone else. They're like me. They got day jobs. They have kids. They have families. And God bless them for competing at such a high level with all the same responsibilities that you and I have. But you're right. Like, I don't have sympathy if you want adulation, if you want notoriety, if you want the world knocking down on your door. Oh, you're so awesome. You're the best 49 to, whatever. like 45 to 49-year-old out there.
You're the best 45 to 49-year-old that played college soccer and lives in New Jersey and has 2 kids and a part-time job.
Right.
There's 18 filters, and you're the best in the world.
Right. First of all, there are like 15 divisions out there. Second of all,
that's actually a component we should bring up, because I want to talk about the future, what we think should happen. What's hard about so I've won twice, right? You don't get paid as much you think you should have, or could have, I should say.
And they were losing money, so that the fact you got any money is a good thing.
But part of the reason, and Joe has said this, there's so many divisions.
Yes.
There's there's 3 people per gender, per age group. It's like 26 people.
Yes.
Like, you can't give them all $5,000. So that's another component to this. Like, open division, looking at our post right now, there's a guy winner and a girl winner.
If you
see you later.
What if you simplified it and you went 35 to 45 or 49 and then 50 and up? Like, just 2 big fucking open divisions out there for stuff.
I'd be cool with I would be fine with 10-year
ages.
Yeah, I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
It's just a lot of divisions.
Yeah,
it's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. You can't keep track of all these athletes. That was, for a hot second, I told you, I was thinking about running out another podcast with just masters and just talking about the sport masters.
Yep.
I really thought about it.
Yep.
And I looked at it and I was like, dude, the amount of data you would have to collect to really break down each division.
A lot of work.
It's insane.
Probably need to hire someone to help you out with
it. Oh my God. So just that fact.
And then it changes every year.
Yes, because these people are moving in, people are migrating up. And so to keep track of all that, listen, let's get real here, okay?
Yeah, again, it comes back to make this for yourself. And then I think all these questions can be solved, including, do I really want to do this? So Sam, we have 2 parts left, 2 questions to ask.
Okay.
Let's answer them.
All right.
What do we think the future is? And the second one, what would we do if it were up to us? If Don Fall came back here and said, guys, what should we do with masters? You guys make the call. So what do we think will happen, and what do we think should happen?
I think, let me say what I think what I would do.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, I hope this is what CrossFit does.
Done. I love it.
Okay. So I want them to take over Legends in December.
Okay.
and make that the games.
Okay.
And give Linton and these guys, Bob, who've had a crap load of experience.
Yep.
And
They're very good at what they do.
Right. And say, we're going to put our name, our brand on your competition.
CrossFit Legends Comp.
Yeah. CrossFit Games, Legends, Masters, whatever you want to call it.
Yep.
You know, you run it. We'll
access to sponsors.
Yes, we'll give you access to our sponsors. We're gonna publicize it. We're gonna push it. These are the games. Piggyback on the open, quarters, semis. Like run that all online the same way.
Okay.
And then give the top athletes like a Sam Dancer the opportunity to compete in the games if they want as an individual. And then most of them will sort of cycle their training so that they could cycle up again for December, compete in Games Legends, whatever you want to call it, and say, let's say we'll subsidize you guys by X amount, and this is your budget, you know, let's see what happens, and then have at it, see what happens with that.
I like the timeline behind it too. My only counterpoint would be Masters, generally speaking. It is hard for some of them to make things happen in December, harder than the summer, I guess, because of kids and jobs. But again, you know, there is not a perfect time for it, and it works pretty well with Legends. You know, they're going to have 500 competitors this year, so maybe the December timeline is great.
They can save money by using the age group online qualifiers and semis to qualify for the games.
Right. So there's no longer an online qualifier. You have the open. If you make top 10%, you can add in the quarters. If you make top 20 in the world.
Yes. And then the semis.
The one counterpoint I would have, or the one suggestion I would have, is to make them, if you're going to have a Masters only games, the number should be more. We shouldn't have 10 guys per division. And I'm going to tell you why. It's not because I came in 14th at the semifinals and they got my butt kicked in the semifinals.
Yeah.
All right. Every year, because Masters athletes are a little bit more vulnerable to getting hurt in the middle of a competition weekend.
Yeah.
You know, you watch the last event or two, and there's only 10 people that start. There's like 6 left in some of these divisions. There's just a bunch of empty lanes. I like the number 30, always have, that every age group gets 30 athletes.
For semis?
No, for the games.
Oh, for the games.
Yeah. So the one thing that the CrossFit would have to do is, hey, everyone could go top 10% at the open. That's fine. Quarterfinals, instead of only the top 20 moving on, should probably be the top 60, top 50. And then the semifinals for them would be 50 people, top 30 make it, something like that. I like that number for a lot of reasons, but the issue would be,
that's expensive to run.
It could be. I think you need a little bit more support for watching. It's just more videos to watch and more videos to validate, but you have time. So this is another thing I would do, because I'm on the same page as you, is give it to Legends, provide support. Open is step 1. Quarterfinals is step 2, but the semifinals are not until the fall.
So after the games.
Let them recover a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, let Sam Dancer decide if he wants to do the semifinals in August. And like some people, I know it's months away. Like you might qualify for semis in April and be like, dude, I got to go in August. But that actually helps a lot. That would help Masters out a lot to like say, all right, I'm not doing semifinals 2 weeks from now. I just put myself through a blender.
Right. And then they could still do the individuals
if they made, or team.
Right. Or team.
If they made, there's a lot of Masters athletes.
And then just do the semis in the fall.
Yeah, September, October, we know, and then in December, we know who's going.
That would be awesome. That would actually build interest like 1 or 2 months before the actual games.
And I think you can easily separate, right? Like one of the reasons why Masters does not get the attention, other than the fact that, no offense, they don't care as much, is it's all at the same time.
Yep.
So like we only have, as consumers, we only have so much bandwidth to give CrossFit sport. And if they're going at the same time, you're going to put all your bandwidth, almost all of it, on Patrick Vellner and Roman, the poster I'm looking at right now, right? Where it's after the games, you still have another month or two of being like, all right, what's next? Like Rogue Invitational in October, like that's cool. Like some people watch it, but like, no, like I'm going to pay attention to the semifinals in the fall.
Yeah.
Gives you also a little bit more time for the video review process. You don't need like a 1 week deadline, which is always a cause for things getting overlooked.
Yes.
And then you have like you use the fall to really build up the Masters.
Yep.
Because that's a pretty dry time of the year for CrossFit in general.
that fall into winter. There's just not much
until Wadapalooza. There's not much happening.
Right. And they opened that in the October a few years ago. Like that is a dry time. And for those that don't care about Masters competing, it's just going to continue to be that dry time. But it kind of gives the Masters an opportunity, their own exclusive time of the year.
Yeah.
Our semis. And hey, if you don't make semis, like, you're not really in the discussion. So just don't bother. Do the quarters, and then you don't have to think about it all summer.
Right.
That's
a great idea.
I think those are the elements that, really can kind of knock two birds out with one stone, is just get the Masters out of the games. And then you have to bring up like venues and everything. But that's where I think Joe and Bob, they really come in. Like Joe, I think he said he looked at 5 or 6 different locations, very proactive. And we're competing at Arizona State this year on campus.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me, and he said it on the podcast, he goes like, it is by far the best venue we've ever had. Just like space, logistics, location, proximity to the airport.
Mm-hmm.
You're in a great town.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Joe has some connections around the country. Maybe it is Arizona, where this is where it could be.
Who programs the CrossFit Legend Games?
I'm available.
I was thinking more like Adrian Bosman versus Joe.
Yeah, that's a great question. That would just probably be part of the negotiation. If I was Joe and I was Bob, because I know Bob does it too, I would have. They do a good job with programming, and I'm big on don't fix it if it's not broken. But they're not employed by CrossFit, so they're probably. I'm assuming. I don't know. Boz and Castro, they might be like, dude, after the games, like, I'm checked out. They might not even want to be involved.
So they'll just like have at it, do whatever you want.
Have at it. We will have to confirm the programming. Like, we have to put our stamp of approval on it.
Sort of like Sanctionals did.
Yeah. Or, you go out and like, you start interviewing, I guess, is that, or just using your network, right? Do you ask Rich Froning if Mayhem wants to do it to kind of build up his brand a little bit? That's kind of what Legends did last year, is building up the Mayhem brand, or Mayhem using Legends. But there's a lot of people out there that I think really could program a really good Masters comp. And I would say let Boz and Castro, let them focus on the individuals. I think that's where they do their best. And I think there's probably someone out there that would be a little bit better with doing the master side of things.
Well, they would have more time at least.
Yeah, right.
So more energy.
So yeah, that's our conclusion, guys. Sam and I both think that Legends, CrossFit, you guys should get in touch with each other, and CrossFit should support Legends, but let Legends run the show. Separate it by 5 to 6 months. Quarterfinals can all be at the same time, but semifinals in the fall, Masters games in the winter. And let them be its own thing, because I think that's the only solution left to kind of lift up the Masters community, which is a very important part of the community. And it's only going to increase as time goes.
You know why this won't happen?
Why?
Because I think it makes too much sense. Everything I think makes too much sense never happens anyway.
Yeah, like an app, right? Jeez, come on, guys, get on that app for Sam.
That's right.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. That's the landscape of Masters Fitness competing. Any comments, questions, please reach out to us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody, for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Herd Fit podcast. Be on the lookout for next week's episode.